Hey there. I'd like to invite you to join in my new free 3-part soul centered business training called You Are the Medicine. In this free 3-part training, you will get clarity in your business, be activated and in action, and overcome your blocks, fears, and imposter syndrome so you can start sharing your unique medicine. The world is changing. Things around us are just getting chaotic and crazier every day. And people need your help. People are yearning for transformation and healing and growth. If you feel the call to be a soul-centered, heart-led coach, healer, therapist, psychedelic pioneer, or other kind of transformational service-centered entrepreneur, I invite you to join us at You Are the Medicine free 3-part business training. The link is right here. You can sign up for free, and I hope to see you soon. Hey everybody here. I am here with Shannon Willis, who's full disclosure, one of my current mastermind clients, and she agreed to be a candidate for the live coaching session. And we're going to go deep into whatever it is she's stuck with. And I hope you'll get something out of just listening to this and see what's possible for you. So Shannon was just starting to tell me about something she was stuck on. And I said, okay, let's just start recording this because that'll be juicy and good. Yeah. So Shannon, tell me, like, what was it that you were saying about feeling stuck but not being able to articulate it?
Yeah. So, hey, Beth. Hey, everybody.
And then we'll tell a little about you and maybe at the end then.
Yeah, sure. Or maybe it'll actually probably come through in some of the conversation that we have. But so what I was just saying is here we are months into the program, and that you have asked us numerous times, Beth, to come to our calls and let you know if we're stuck with something so we can work through things, right? And so what was just coming through in our conversation is that there have been a number of times that I have felt like I'm stuck, but I don't even know how to articulate what that stuckness is. Like, it just feels like something is a little off. We have assignments, we have explorations that we're doing, and every time I do it, I just go, I'm doing this, I'm working on this, but something isn't quite clicking, right? And I don't even know how to say what it is. And I will say that probably 1 or 2 months ago, I was really inspired by one of the other people in the group who posted in our group, in our group page. And she said, oh my God, I just had a huge aha. I just broke through some stuckness. She said, all this time I was working on, concept A of what I thought my business was supposed to be and what I was building up around it. And then suddenly I realized, like, wait a minute, that's not actually what my business really was. It's actually this other thing. And only by going through the process of like feeling stuck, did I get to the point where I realized, oh, I'm stuck because that's not it. And something else just blew through, and that is actually it. You see? So the process of like feeling stuck, as uncomfortable as it was, actually was the thing that like shot her through that block into what actually is her thing that she wants to work on. So I was really inspired by that. And I had a sense in me that this is also true for me. I just went, I feel that stuckness too, that it's just not quite right. Like, where I am is not exactly where I'm meant to be just yet. And so what I was saying is, as I was considering this call and really just leaning into, well, what are my blocks right now? And I was doing some journaling on that, and I was doing some exercises on that. And it totally happened to me. Like, boom, something came through, and I realized, like, what I've been working on this whole time is not it. And on the one hand, that was an amazing, liberating feeling, because I went, aha, I know what is it. I know what is it, which I'll share with you about this shift in understanding. But then what was behind that was, okay, so what's stopping me now? Right? So what would be the fears or the limiting beliefs that might be beneath this that are going to keep me from doing this, right? Because I could say, aha, voila, I've got it now. And then 6 months from now, I still haven't done it. Right? Like, like we talk about, what's holding us back.
Thank you for sharing all this. Thank you so much. And yes, just so you know, to normalize what you're going through and the other person in the mastermind went through, and it usually does happen after a fair amount of months in the mastermind program. I actually, I don't know if you remember, I usually tell people like in January, February, I say, it's usually around like July, August, September when things start to move, because it does take embodied experiential feelings to realize like what it is you really want to be doing. Usually when people are stuck, one of the issues is that they're thinking in their head, like there's like stuck, and it becomes this rumination. But you have to actually like try something, like experience something. Go speak to people, maybe even develop a workshop or go put yourself out there or talk. I will mention, just so people know, like you went and created this whole entire workshop that you delivered at a Charles Eisenstein retreat, and you just did it out of pure joy and inspiration and fun and not any attachment. And it sounded like it went really well. So, even though you believe that you're stuck, I do want to point out you have been moving, like there's been movement. It's not like you're just sitting around doing nothing. Like you did, that was huge. So commend yourself for that.
Thank you.
But yeah. And thanks for sharing all this. But let me ask, what came through when you were doing these exercises? And I will say one of them was this kind of fear exercise that I gave. Like, I don't remember when I gave that, but it's always a good one for newer entrepreneurs to do, is like, just get it out of our heads, like write down all the fear that you have and like, just get it out there. Plan A, plan B, like what is the worst case scenario? And then do the opposite, write down like the best case scenario. And for each and every one of those fears, there's always a polar opposite. Usually it's our programming or, which is rooted in many different things, which we can go into here. That's getting in the way, that's making up stories as to, like why you don't believe all the positive can happen, but you believe all the fear and the worst case scenarios can happen. So let me ask, like, what would you like from what you gathered during this journaling, like, what is it now that you would like?
So what I would like is to move forward with this creation 100% authentic to who I absolutely already know I am, without any stories of what it should be or what someone else might think or what is appropriate for me to do. That is what I would like.
Great.
The two things are different. And where I've been building from is, what do I think the world needs, people think, people want, what would they say, what should I do, what does culture need? And the other one is, who am I actually authentically, just very simply, who wants to come through and is screaming to come through and could so easily do it if I just shove all those other considerations out of the way.
Great.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. And this excites me because there's and we'll probably touch on it in this, but there's a little history here of, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, who are you to do that. But let me ask, like, what is this, don't worry if you're not 100% clear, but what is this idea of this authentic offer that came to you, or kind of the direction?
Let me see if I can put it into a nutshell, right? So the nuttiest, the smallest nutshell of it is that what I feel I am here to do in my own life, and so then what I think the work actually is for me to share, is related to what I was just saying, which is to realize that we are inside of the box of programming, of culture, of what we should do and who we should be, which keeps us very small, keeps us in desks and jobs and all kinds of things that limit us. And I've spent my whole life either being out of the box or fighting to be out of the box or falling back into the box and getting myself out of the box again. And when I am my most excited and most passionate is when I'm talking about that itself. Like, get yourself out of the box. The world needs you to not be part of in the meat grinder. The world needs you to not be a part of the machine, right? And your heart and soul and spirit also need that. And the planet needs that, right? And that is what I think is my work to do. So just to tell you the other side of that is where I've been focusing on and what I've been thinking that my work is to do is actually to help share and support people through the process I took, right? So the process I took, which is through various avenues. It's through different kinds of schooling. It's through activism. It's through spiritual study, tons and tons of spiritual study. And so I've been thinking, well, I need to talk to people about learning and education and activism and deprogramming and spiritual study. But the breakthrough for me was, no, what I really just want to talk about is be you. That's what I needed to be me. But that's not what I'm here to teach. What I'm here to teach is how do you be you? And I had a download. It was like a download of who are my heroes. And the heroes that I have in general are people who were just them. It's like Henry David Thoreau and, Jack Kerouac and Joseph Campbell telling everybody to follow your bliss. And it's all these, there's a whole line of them, right? And they're all people who are Gandhi and Martin Luther King. They're march to the beat of your own drummer, right? Don't let anybody else drum for you. And that has always been the spark that sparks me. And I heard stories coming in immediately yeah, but those are all men. Yeah, but those are all people from the past. Yeah, those are all people that, if you go out and say that your hero is Joseph Campbell and Henry David Thoreau, people are going to be like, where's the women? Where's the BIPOC? Where's the modern stuff? So I started noticing all these stories about not even letting my heroes be my heroes. Not even let marching by the beat of my own drummer, not even letting that be my good enough. Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. So, so just to set that aside. So that's really, or just to tie a short bow in it there, that's really what came through to me today was I've already done this. And there's a quote that I love that I have said to people for years and years when I was I used to do nonviolent activist training. And my favorite module when we did the activist training was self-nonviolence. It was be nonviolent to yourself. And I always started that quote off with this quote. It says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who've come alive. Right? So, and that's Howard Thurman who said that, civil rights activist, right? So that's what I want to teach is stop asking what the world needs. And I'm telling myself that because here I am sitting I'm going to make a program. What does the world need? I'm not even following my advice. Ask what makes me come alive and I'm going to go do that, right? And trust that when I do that, that I'm serving the world in the way that I'm meant to do.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. This is so good. And just to point out, as a business coach and, other coaches and maybe therapists can see this a lot too, but I see this constantly and it's kind of just makes sense, but you will always be sharing the medicine of what you went through. And very often transformational entrepreneurs, especially in the first few years, are only a step ahead of what they're here to share. On this level, you are actually going through the process of what you want to be teaching, and you've been going through it, and you've even done all these, activist trainings on it, but now it's kind of like this next level. And it's part of, to me, this is the initiation. It's like you go through this so you can then better serve, because it's like, oh God, I had to really be pushed to that edge of feeling like I need to do this or this or this for, the wrong reasons, which, by the way, are not bad reasons. Like, what does the world need? But you've seen this. I have that pyramid that shows it's all about the balance of us, other, mission. And the mission is really still you, because it's like, every human has their why, their mission. And really, in the end, the top of that balanced pyramid is you. Like, what is it you really want to bring to the world? What is it that makes you alive? So let me ask, if you were helping people get out of the box and be themselves, and you mentioned authenticity, what would having that do for you?
I think it would, for one thing, it would be feeding my own soul, right? Because I'm doing something that does feel right, not something that feels just a little bit off, right? And it would, like, there's something in that answer related to money, right? Because what it would do is it would put me on the right track, on the track that my soul is actually asking me to go, versus these questions that I keep following that are around, well, what do people do that makes them money? Or what can I do that will sustain me? And that feels like inauthentic, even to be asking that question first, right? Like, I'm asking the money question, and then I'm trying to build what I'm doing underneath that, and it's not congruent. And so what I think it would do is just free me to where I already know I want to be, but just subconsciously the money fear has been there. And so it would release me from that. If I said, like, you know what? Because when I went to my fears on the two sides of the paper, my worst fear, there were a couple worst fears. And I'll just tell you what those were, because I think if I were actually doing this work, those fears wouldn't matter anymore. So the first fear it was like the worst possible thing that could happen if I fail at this, is that I would go back to my hometown where I left when I was 19 years old and be literally living in my mom's basement and have to go get a full-time job. And that sounded so horrific to me. I was like, that's the worst thing that could happen. And then I thought, you know what? That's not life or death. That's not like the worst thing in the world. And let's say I was actually doing this work that I clearly came into the work to do, right? Which is bigger than what we're talking about here, but it's founded on this. If I were really doing that, would I really care if I was in my mom's basement? No. I'd be like, great, I'm in my mom's basement. I love my mom. And I'm doing the work that I came into the world to do, right? And then the other worst fear, which felt scarier, like the fear beneath that fear, was that I would actually die or come to the end of my life. Oh my gosh. This is a quote that comes from Henry David Thoreau that I've been thinking about and considering since I was 15 years old. He says, I want to live deliberately, and not when I come to die, discover I have not lived. And when I thought of my worst fear, I went, I don't want to come to die to the end of my life and know that I didn't live who I came here to be. I didn't live the life I came here to live. And so then I thought, well, let's say worst case scenario, I'm living in my mom's basement, but I'm living the life that I came to live. That fear is no longer there anymore, right? If I can just divorce myself from the identity crisis that is connected to my mom's basement for some reason, if I'm actually doing this work, then those deepest fears really aren't relevant to me anymore.
Huge. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And it's true. I talk about this a lot, where it's like we have to start with ourselves. The pyramid is a balanced pyramid. It could actually be flipped in different directions. Just so happens at the top is I put into like the mission of like what you want to see change in the world. But the service to other and service to self is actually even, because that really does have to come from within you. Like, what lights you up, what makes you feel alive, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And if it's starting from the money, which, by the way, I've seen this numerous times over the years, where people start from this idea that, oh, well, executive coaching would make the most money, or business coaching. And by the way, none of this is true. There's money located where the heart is. The money is located because there's other people. There's always someone looking for your help, whatever it is. I mean, there's chicken coaches out there. There's surf coaches. There's garden coaches. There's, women's embodiment. We could go on and on. There's everything available. But if you're starting from like, well, which one would be the easiest to make money, or the one that would just, have people willing to pay? I mean, it's like, first, we never know that, like, there's gazillionaires out there that'll pay for the chicken coach,
Yeah.
there's people out there that really need help with their business that, by the way, very often do not invest in business coaching. And I know this because I'm a business coach. So it's actually just, these stories that we make up that are not rooted in any reality. And that's normal, by the way. It's like, I see this all the time. But thank you so much for sharing this. I love this vision. So let me ask, how will you know when you have this, when you're doing it?
That's a good question. I mean, part of me wants to just say that I'll know because I'll actually do it, because I've just had this sort of shift in understanding. And I had a thought that, so for example, on my website, on my offering page, it's about one-on-ones around a certain type of therapeutic offering, right? Because I did some training in counseling psychology, and I thought, you know what, I can use that training and all the other spiritual training that I have and offer these one-on-ones. And then after I had this sort of shift, I just went, no, forget that page. I'm going to change that whole page. That whole page is going to be, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, right? To just rewrite that whole thing. And just, rebranding is not exactly the word, but I just feel like it's right there waiting for me to just stop saying I'm doing that and start saying I'm doing this, honestly. And just maybe even do something silly. Like, I've never had a business card in my life, but maybe just make a business card that says that quote on it or something and hand it out to people. Like something where I literally just start saying I'm doing this other thing. But I'd love to know what you think about that.
What stops you from doing that?
Well, I'm not going to say time because I know you're going to go.
Well, if you're truly busy, that it's like, oh, wow, I just don't have time to make business cards for the next month or two, then hey, you're the only one that knows if you're too busy to make a business card.
Okay, well, here's one thing that would stop me. Like, no, I'm not too busy to make business cards. I would actually have fun doing that. That'd be a lot of fun because I'm a designer. It makes me happy to design business cards. If I just think about like what would really stop me, here's something that would stop me for this. Well, even though I've had this breakthrough, it would have stopped me before and it would stop me now. And there's a mindset piece around this, I think. And if anything, it even feels edgy to say this. If anything, I feel I'm too humble. You see, like a story just came up for me that I'll tell you. It was when I was 8 years old. And I've always been an artist, and I made a drawing. I made a piece of art, and it was really cute. And I won a blue ribbon. It was in elementary school. I won a blue ribbon at the art show. And I remember sitting in the assembly, and they were calling people up for their awards. And they announced that I had won this blue ribbon for this piece of art that I had done. And as I was walking up, and I was so proud of myself for doing this, and then everybody was clapping for me, and people were like, kids were happy for me, like Shannon won the blue ribbon. And in my mind, I was thinking like, I don't know if this is humility or what it is, but I was thinking like, if they only knew, that I didn't have to work that hard to do that, and that, I used a little grid when I drew it. And I felt like something about me had like cheated and almost didn't, not that I didn't deserve it. I knew I deserved it. It was a good drawing. But something wanted to keep myself small and not fully own that I did this great thing.
Mm.
And that's a pattern. It's a pattern I've seen, a thread throughout my life, that for some reason that maybe I don't quite know, I don't step in and like fully own when I've done something great.
Mm.
And therefore, when I have an opportunity to really do something great, or just say like, hey, I'm offering this great thing, I don't do that. I'd be like, well, I'm offering this thing, and you might find it beneficial, right? So I think that could actually stop me, because I feel I want to go big. I feel that I'm ready to go big, and keeping myself like the little girl walking up the aisle and thinking like, well, I don't want to really fully own this and like shine with my blue ribbon,
Wow.
And I'll hang the blue ribbon on my wall at home and be super proud of it, right? But there's no way I'm going to like put it up on me and say, look at my ribbon, right?
Yeah.
So curious what that awakes in you.
Yeah, this is great. Let's dig into this a little, because there's definitely something here that's very juicy. And wow, what great realizations. Thank you so much for sharing those.
Sure.
Let me ask, because I want to dig into that, but let me ask this again, just so we can kind of start from the top.
Mm-hmm.
Considering everything you just shared, and maybe this realization, and maybe how it's interconnected to the stuckness, even the stuckness since the revelation, even maybe, what would you like?
I love that you're asking that again. I would like to break through that box. And I mean, I truly want to be free. And I want to lead or guide other people to freedom.
Great. Let me ask, what does break through the box mean to you? Like, break through the box how?
Again, that's a really good question. It's the box of programming. It's all of those, like Joseph Campbell just came to me saying, like, kill the should monster, right? It's like the box of the programming of all the shoulds. Because fighting them even my whole life, I can feel them around me. And it's like when one box gets removed, another box comes on top. And then I spend my time considering those shoulds instead of just busting through. And there was an email that came through the other day from Carolyn Lovewell. And when I read it, I was so amped up. She's like, look, anybody who is this person or this person or this person, I don't even want you coming to my event. I'm going to push through. I'm clear on who I am. If you don't like who I am, you can stand outside the box. She didn't use that language, but she's like, if you don't like what I'm doing or the way that I'm doing it, I don't want you in my field. Step aside, because here's what I'm doing, and you can jump in and do this with me if you want to. Otherwise, step out. Right? And I was like, damn, that's like, I want to be able to do that. Right? Yeah. So that's the box.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You mentioned boxes and shoulds, and then another layer of shoulds that come through, you break through, and then there's more. And then you also mentioned freedom. So what is freedom specifically to you?
Hmm. Well, there are some really tangible freedoms. There's the freedom of not having to like the really tangible one, not having to work a 9 to 5 job for another person and have my life and my time be beholden to a boss or a company, right? That's one aspect of freedom. Um, it's a big one. And then there's freedom to travel, to move around, like those kinds of freedom, like freedom from and freedom to are two really big ones. And the reason those feel so important to me is because the freedom I want is I've always had sort of a symbol for myself, which also goes back to Thoreau, which is the cabin in the woods, where he was able to step out of his life and he was able to go and literally live in a cabin in the woods for 2 years. And what did he do? He came to know himself, he came to know the world, and he created his major work, Walden. And when he left the cabin in the woods and he went back into his society, right, his town, everything in the town was still the same, right? But he had done the work he came to do, and it's like his spirit was free. He went back and his spirit was free. And that's the kind of freedom that's less tangible. Honestly, I feel like if I could go and live in a cabin in the woods for 2 years, that would not be a bad thing. Like, so that feels like freedom to me.
Thank you for sharing. I love it. Cabin in the woods. What's stopping you from just going and living in? I mean, I live in a cabin in the woods. Maybe it's a little bigger than a cabin, but I'm wondering, is that just seen as some kind of like solution, or like how would your life be different if you were living in a cabin in the woods versus wherever you live right now?
I think what it is like what it symbolizes for me is a simplification of life down to sort of its barest elements, so that there's actually the time and the energy to fully live, right? It's freedom from the distractions and the grind and the merry-go-round and the matrix.
Aha.
Right?
What are these distractions and grind and merry-go-round of the matrix that you're mentioning? Like, and how do they affect you now?
I think they are the box. I think they're the thing that I keep landing in. And so, for example, just to give a couple small examples, there have been times in my life where I've made this huge effort to like, I'm going to pull out of this job and I'm going to go travel and I'm going to go be free. And then something will pull me back into life, right? Like, now I need a job. Now I'm living in this place. And now I've got a whole bunch of responsibilities will come down on me and lots of minutia in my life and things I'm taking care of. And then I go, I've got to get out of this box again, right? Like, I've just taken on a whole bunch of distractions. And yeah, it's hard to explain in a real, very simplified answer, but then I'll get pulled, I'll extract myself and say, I'm going to be free. And I'm going to go and I'm going to sit on the beach and I'm going to read Alan Watts and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to live in my bus. And then life will come back in and pull me in, right? This is my personal story, of course, but I see it as like a cycle in my life of me trying to get free and then getting what I feel is getting sucked back in.
But what specifically is sucking you back in? Like, for example, is it, I don't know, like right now, the reason I'm probably not in Bali is because my mom is elderly and I feel like it's a little too far because she's kind of always on the brink of something happening. You know, that's like maybe a real reason to keep me from going to Bali. But even then, it's not really. There's an airplane that would get me to her in 24 hours. But I'm just curious, like, what are these life distractions and are they a choice?
I love that you just use that example because you could be in Bali, but you're making the choice to be there right now.
Yeah.
And I think they are things like that. There was actually when my father died and I needed to go back and take care of the things of his life. There was when my biological mother died, when I literally was living in my bus on the beach. And I was like, I've got the life. And then my biological mother died, and I went back and took care of her life. And it was about 2 or 3 years of going through her things and trying to take care of her animals and her life. And it was a big, heavy responsibility. Mm-hmm. And there have been other times where I got into, and then that was the last big one that happened. And then I got into a relationship, and that relationship, I didn't realize, but that relationship was actually, I was really holding myself into the box, thinking that I needed to have financial security. And I'm not even sure that really came from me. I feel like that story may have actually come from him, that accommodating him, this idea of financial security. And there have been other relationships where I've sort of landed in this relationship and been held there. So it's just been a number of things. And I think that's why this feels so good right now, because I can see that pattern. I can see the shift that I'm making. And right now, there's no death. There's no responsibility of someone's life that I need to go back and honor right now. Knock on wood, thank God. There's no job. There's nothing stopping me right now from going and living in the cabin in the woods. There's nothing stopping me. And maybe not the first time in my life, but one of the first times in my life where I could say, like, what's really stopping you? Because if there's anything stopping you, it's only you. Like, if there's anything stopping me, it's only me right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I also wanted to point out that piece about a relationship, because even if it's someone else, saying like, oh, stay here because of the financial security or whatever. I mean, it's still, I don't care how, many years people are married. It's always a choice to be in that marriage. Like, it's no one's forced. I mean, were you forced to stay in the relationship?
No, absolutely not. No, of course it was my choice. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's no forcing. It's all been my choice. That's why. And I look back and go, wow, since I was 15, I wanted to go and like spend 2 years just hanging out by the lake and writing a magnum opus, and I still haven't done it. There's no way that I can put that responsibility on anyone other than myself. There's no way. And maybe that's another piece of like my own journey, and what I want to share is that this is our responsibility. Nobody else chose this for us.
Yeah. So then the key is to kind of work through and see, like, what is it in your subconscious or your programming, which we're starting to unravel here. We're seeing a lot of pieces of this, a lot of the shoulds and the boxes and the, these kind of reasonings to keep yourself small, to keep yourself, from choosing situations. I mean, obviously, like dealing with a parent who passed is one thing, but other situations, you're right. It's truly like in your hands. You could say yes, or you could say no. Yeah. So then, you had mentioned like the freedom, letting go of these shoulds, the getting out of the box, stepping away from the matrix, which, that's a whole other discussion about the matrix and, this belief that we can step out of it. I mean, here's my personal belief. I'm just going to throw this in because trust me, I go through this a lot. But I always see like the way to create a different matrix than what people call the matrix is that we have to be the ones to change it. Like if we all step out, okay, maybe it'll just collapse because there'll be nobody contributing to what we call the matrix. But at the same time, like even people that are quote out of the matrix, they still buy things in stores, there's very few people on planet Earth that are truly, independent. Everybody's completely interdependent, whether they're living in the jungle in an intentional community or not, they're still getting certain things. They still have cars and motorcycles that require fuel. Like there's just so many little pieces of the matrix that, so then it becomes like, what does that really mean to you? Like, and I think it's more like what you mentioned, like the freedom, the freedom from the shoulds. And now I'm just wondering, like, let's say you stepped out of the matrix, lived in the woods, had less shoulds, had this kind of freedom. What will having that do for you?
Well, the answer that came to me is that it's kind of like that 5 whys exercise when you go, why this, why this, why this, right? I think what it would give me is peace. I think that's what it would do for me. And that may not be accurate, might not actually give me peace, but I have a sense that there's something that is kind of mine to do in this world. And that in order for me to do it, I need to be willing to drop the shoulds and the fears. And it doesn't matter if it's a cabin in the woods, but like I need to actually devote myself to what the things my soul has been calling me to do all my life. And that if I do that, it doesn't have to be 2 years in a cabin, but if I do that, there's like a peace in the flow. A peace in the flow. Like I have a quote right here. It's a Lao Tzu quote I think it's from the Tao Te Ching. Those who flow as life flows know they need no other force. So it's like that. It's like I'd be flowing like my life flows. And there's peace in that. Not peace like the rest of my life is going to be peaceful and I'm never going to have any ups and downs. But a peace in being in the flow of my own river, and the peace of like, marching to my own drummer, that feels like peace to me. Mm. And I think that's what I'm really wanting.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Let me ask, how will you know when you have this peace and flow of life in your own river?
Well, when I was talking to you about it just now, I could feel it in my body. I could feel what that feels like. And it's a very different feeling than other feelings I commonly have, which feel like sort of an anxiety, and it's very sort of head-based and concerns and worries and future-based and things like that. And I think that feeling that came to me when I was talking about this, it's sort of fleeting. But what if I actually were living with that feeling all the time? It's like Gay Hendricks, in the Genius Zone, when he says, like, what if you're living in your genius zone 25% of the time, or 50% or 75%? He's like, what if you were living in your genius zone 90% of the time? Right? What would that feel like? It's that you're in your flow of your life. So it's not perfection, but what would it feel like? It would feel like me being in that flow feeling. Maybe 90% of the time is too much to ask, but like, maybe not. Right? It's an embodied feeling. It's like I drop right back in to my heart. I'm breathing. I feel that it's like I'm a painter, right? And I am a painter. And when I paint, I can get into that space where it feels timeless. And I feel that I and my paints and the paper and everything are sort of one. They're one. And there is no concern or, that sort of anxious intellectual cranking, right, isn't going on, because there's a different intelligence at work there. That's what that feels like, like living with that different intelligence at work.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So let me ask, like, how will having this flow in your life, the peace, everything you just described just now, like, how would this affect important people or other aspects of your life?
I think it actually comes back full circle to that if I actually do that, that I'm showing up in a way that's authentic to me, and that actually nurtures everything else around me more authentically, right? Yeah, I can feel that by me not being up here in my head and needing to figure it out and feeling there's not enough time and feeling I'm running out of time and being anxious, and then I don't have time for the relationships that I want to have, and I don't have time to actually nurture the things that are important to me if I'm spinning too many wheels. And so to actually be living from that place of flow and peace would just make me a better everything, right? Not just being at peace in myself, but a better friend and sister and daughter and, you know, all the things I am. Yeah, I can see. And it would also make other people happy, you know, around me. Be like, Shannon is happy. Shannon's like finally doing her thing. My mom's told me 100 times, why don't you just go get a cabin and live in it? You know, so people want to see people they love happy. You know?
Yeah.
So I can see it affecting me and others in a really wonderful way. If I just give myself permission, I think that's right. Mindset there is a mindset block is that I think I need to give my own self permission, and maybe I'm waiting for something else to give me permission. Maybe I'm waiting for life to give me permission, or, you know, some guru to give me permission, or someone to tell me it's okay.
Hold on. Thank you so much for sharing. Hold on. I've actually done this for clients before.
Okay. Oh, I know what you're doing.
Signed by official business coach.
Yes.
Not a guru, sorry, but I do have there's a guru down the street somewhere, maybe at the Hare Krishna temple, and I'll have one of them sign it. And then I'll send it to you, and then now you can frame this, because now you have an official permission slip to go be yourself, do what you want.
If you would really just mail that to me, I would be thrilled. I would put it right on my wall right here.
Actually, maybe I'll make certificates this year. But let me ask, this is interesting that you mentioned that, because actually my next question was going to be, what might you have to give up that you value in order to get this flow, this peace, this life you want?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, and I touched on this previously already, but I think I might have to give up some of my my stories about my identity. You know, because I don't know what my life would look like, the nuts and bolts of my life. You know, like let's say worst case scenario, again, chuckle at this, but like worst case scenario is I need to go and live in my mom's basement, and I need to just to add insult to injury, I need to go get like a part-time job at Walmart. Now I'm a Walmart checker, right? I don't want that to sound terrible to any Walmart checkers out there, right? But I'm like, for me, there is an identity crisis in that. And there is the potential of like really jumping out to go toward what is right for me. There is that, you know, fear, right, of regressing or falling into a place that I don't want to identify as. And I think there's actually some ancestral stuff in that as well, which I would just, you know, put a pin in that. I think there's some ancestral stuff that I inherited there. Like there's certain things that you shouldn't do or be, or you always need to move forward. And there's a sense of like smallness that I'm afraid of, or boringness, or mundaneness, or worldliness, or like I've got like judgments. You can probably hear judgments in that coming through. That I would judge myself.
In the smallness?
Yeah, like judgments about what it means to be a person who's living in your mom's basement, or judgments about, not for other people, but for about me. What would that mean about me? What would that mean about me? That would be like a failure, right? Is there a failure in that? So when you ask, like, what do I need to sacrifice? It's really like, I need to sacrifice. No.
What would you have to give up?
Oh, what do I have to give up?
You have to give up?
I might have to give up like my fear of, failing.
Fear of failing.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. And, the one thing I want to point out that's very interesting in what you just said was you mentioned, fear of failing, but, being small, mundane, kind of the everyday life, living in a basement. But then, earlier you'd mentioned that you keep yourself small.
Touche.
I mean, did you, I mean, it's interesting. This is where it gets really deep, but did you notice that connection?
I mean, I was aware of the connection, but I'm noticing it more since you pointed it out. And it actually reminds me of the reading that I had from the astrological reading that I had earlier in the year that you hooked us up with. And that reading really spoke to this. It spoke to there being like a need for unveiling authenticity. Like that was the big story of the reading, was unveiling authenticity and even being an authenticity activist, right? And I know I was reading back at that and I was like, oh, I'm still there, right? And part of that is, it was funny, he called it the pinup girl. He didn't call it the pinup girl, but the symbol that came through the reading was the pinup girl. And it was like you let yourself shine, like you let yourself be out there, right? In order to do this work, you let yourself be out there. There can't be any keeping small, right? So how much could my fears about being small be keeping me small? And how much of it is that I'm not small anyway? Like I'm actually not small. And I don't necessarily think that I don't think of myself as small. And yet the stories I'm telling and the behaviors and the fears that I'm telling, they have that aspect of smallness, right? So what is that about? And maybe what that's about is it's just one of those should monsters that needs to be killed before, in order for me to like fully break through.
Wow. What realizations. These are beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, they're very helpful. Thank you for teasing all of this out and making the connections, because the smallness is there. It's not quite clear to me yet. It's almost like there's something in my shadow there.
Well, this is what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Digging into the shadow.
Digging in, because the more we can just, like bring it all to the surface like we're doing here, even, doing the exercises I gave, but then like just digging in, on some level, because we can do some deeper work around this. But on some level, this is like it's like all you have to do is just the awareness. And the awareness of the patterns and kind of like even the 8-year-old, that story of being 8 and like how it came up. And maybe that was one of your earlier memories and there's probably more, but just having that awareness and then how it plays out, like this is where the healing and the transformation starts to happen. And you don't even need to like, quote, do anything, because it's just, it's integrated. This is the integration. But let me ask one more time. What would you like?
I'd like to break free of the fear of smallness. I mean, the other things I would like are there too, right? The freedom, the flow, the cabin, my own drummer, all of that. That's what I would really, the peace, right? The peace of that. And then as you ask, what would I like? It's like the power to push through that feel of failure, the power to push, the ability, the courage, to just drop that weight of the fear of the smallness and the regression and the mom's basement. All, just drop it. Mm-hmm. Like Carolyn Lovewell being like, just get out of my field. I got work to do, and that is another part of the freedom.
Mm. Beautiful. So drop the fear of the smallness that's keeping you small.
Yeah, drop the fear of the smallness that's keeping me afraid to jump, because I'm afraid I'm going to land in a place of smallness.
Mm. Jump how? Like jump.
Well, I need to make a big leap soon, because since my job ended and my relationship ended, I've been in a place of, it's kind of been like a bardo that I've been in for a bit, where I'm not quite sure. I'm in a holding pattern and I need to make a big leap. And I've been like in that breath, like just waiting to go, like, which direction do I jump? Because I can't stay right here. It's not like things are needing to move. And so which direction do I jump? And that jump can be in a direction of, it can be, based in fear or lack or confusion, or that jump can just be like, I'm clear and I'm free and I'm going for what I really know I want. Right? And the one jump doesn't even feel like a jump. It just feels like I kind of sink into a pool. Like sink into something. But the other one feels like really a jump. It feels like really being like a rocket taking off. And I want to be that rocket. And the fears around money and the fears around, possibly, losing my home, right? Which is very real. It's a very real, this has been my home for years. And it's very possible that I'm going to lose it. And so it's also like a super trust that if I really jump, I'm not going to fall through the ground. I'm not going to fall through the earth, right? Like if I really jump and it's what's meant for me, I'm going to land. I'm going to land on my feet. And I always have before.
It's a good one to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Let me ask, what would happen if 2 years go by, or maybe 3 or 4, and you still haven't jumped?
I'll be really unhappy with myself. Like it would feel like an insult to my soul if I haven't jumped. Mm-hmm. And actually, this is what I saw happen to my biological mother, the one who died and whose, life and home I had to go back home and unravel. She never jumped. And she always wanted to jump, and she complained about not jumping, and she wanted to jump, and she needed to jump. And she had all the dreams, and she had all the visions, and she had all the talents, and she didn't jump. And she really did die with her spark inside of her. And she told me, like, she was like, my biggest worry for you, my biggest concern for you is, like, I want you to be able to live your spark. I want you to be able to, like, don't die with your spark in you. And I was like, don't die with your spark in you. So that's where I say there's some ancestral stuff here too. And I'm not honoring like my lineage or my ancestors or anything I am by like, again, it's staying small if I don't jump. It's just staying small. Right? But if I just take my arrow and, let it go and go for it, I'm honoring myself. I'm honoring everyone I came from, right? Who sacrificed for me to be here, right? So if I don't do that in 2 years from now and I look back and I go, Shannon, you had the chance. You had no job holding you back. You had no relationship. You didn't need to have that house. There was absolutely no excuse. You had clarity. You had coaches. You had coaching, right? You had permission. And you still didn't do it? There's no excuse on God's green earth that is good enough to excuse that, right? And it's not about being hard on myself or like knocking myself down, but it's like, look, girl, the window is open. Just jump through.
Jump through. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, and you mentioned this house. Is it that, I mean, because this is also where I say to people, it's like, okay, if you don't jump, is the house still going to be there? Because it's like, if you do jump, the house is there, and if you don't jump, the house is there. So you're kind of putting yourself in this like lose-lose situation where it's like, well, if you jump, you might lose the house, but if you don't jump, you might also lose the house, right?
Such a good call, Beth. It's such a good call. You're absolutely right. If I don't jump, I'm still, might lose the house, right? So the house shouldn't really just shouldn't even be in the consideration, right? But if I do jump, what I will gain is like, I'll gain the world. I'll just gain the world. There's so much. There's also self-respect in that too. Like if I do jump, I've jumped a lot of times before and I've never regretted when I've jumped. Never, and I've gotten really comfortable in this life here. It's the most comfortable I've ever been, even through the hardships. Right? And so how much of that is that comfort holding me? I'm like, oh, but the house. Right? But what if I truly just jumped into a whole new iteration, like a whole new spiral, right? Where would I be?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And I just find it fascinating because that was going to be one of my questions is like, has there ever been a time where you've jumped and been scared, but it turned out okay. You didn't die. Right. And you've already said that you offered this, like, I've done this many times.
I've done it many times, and I was like, Indiana Jones, right? I'm just going to cut everything and I'm just going to jump across the crevasse, right? I'm going to land on the other side and I make it. And it's always been good. I've always grown from it. I've never regretted it. Even a couple times I've kind of fallen, even the times I've fallen, I don't regret those either. Yeah. Right. But what I will regret is 2 years from now if I didn't jump.
I'm wondering how this situation you're in today is different than the past jumps.
Oh gosh, you know what? I think maybe I don't have something to jump to. It's when you said that, because all the times I've jumped in the past, it's like I'm going there. And I make a jump, right? And maybe I make it or maybe I don't, or maybe I grab on by my fingertips. But right now, and for the past, ever since we've been, even before the mastermind, I've been like standing on the edge and feeling like I'm going to need to jump, but I can't see where I'm going. And that is different for me.
You were always able to see how things would go when you jumped previously, or how it would turn out?
No, I wasn't able to see how they would go, but I'd be like, you know what, I'm going to buy this plane ticket and I'm going to go to this place. Or I'm going to be like when I got my bus and I said, I'm going to go and, okay, so like when I moved to Guatemala, I just decided I'm going to move to Guatemala, and I just moved there. right? And some of it was awesome and some of it was disastrous, but I moved there, right? It's like I had a ticket to ride. And then, or then like, I'm going to go into this relationship, or I'm going to go into this, I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to go to, uh, oh gosh, what was I just going to say?
Yeah.
Like jumping towards something, or like when I bought my bus and I said, I'm going to go and buy a bus and park it on the beach. And then I did it. So I had, you know what? You know what? Maybe it is. Maybe it's the cabin in the woods.
And it doesn't have to actually be a physical cabin in the woods. It's what it represents. Yeah.
It's what it represents. Maybe it's really a matter, because I did that, like the arrow pointing. And that's the thing, is I'm like standing here with my arrow going, what do I do? And I've always like had my arrow pointed at something, and I've done it. So this actually feels really good, Beth. Maybe it's a matter of like establishing my target, so that I have something to leap to, right? Because I'm not trying to be Wile E. Coyote and I leap and then I just stop in midair because I didn't know what I was doing. And
he always lives too.
He does live, even when he crashes. He totally does.
A million lives, eternal.
I know, when the rock falls on him, right? And then he's back in the next cartoon. But I think this actually feels really good to me, because I think this might be the missing piece. Because I'm not a person who's afraid to leap, even in my comfort. But I do need to know where I'm leaping. Like I do need to like at least be leaping in a direction, right? And so what is that? What is the direction I'm leaping? And maybe that's my next question. Maybe that's my next exploration.
Yeah, and I think here's the thing. We can come up with any direction. It's always good to have a visual. I've talked about this in the mastermind. It's like, we seek clarity because that's our mind's way of trying to feel safe. Like, okay, I'm clear on where I'm going next. But in the truth of life as a human being, we literally never know what's going to happen in the next moment. It's very hard to come to terms with that, but that's like the real, like, that's not a woo-woo concept. That's actually like the truth. So the more we can come to terms with like, well, okay, we don't know how things are going to turn out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, but we can come up with something either symbolic or real or just something tangible. And this is why I always suggest like, okay, come up with like, the next thing, like the workshop, what would be fun, what would light you up, like what's alive for you now. Because really in the end, like we can try to seek clarity, but then that can cause another loop where people just get stuck. But, this is why I like that visual of the cabin in the woods. It's like, well, what does that represent for you? And how could this be connected back to what it is you've, these epiphanies about what it is you'd like to bring out there? And maybe, instead of focusing on like this huge picture, it's like, well, what's alive for you right now? Like, what would be fun to bring out there? What would be fun to do? And that's where it's like the next visual of where to get to. And then it's kind of like, and, I talk about, you've heard me talk about this, I'm sure, in the mastermind, like the following the golden nuggets. It's not necessarily about like, okay, I want to make $1 million by this date, and then this is my backwards plan. I mean, there are some people that do that. It's not really my thing, because it's usually coming at it from the wrong place. And usually when people do that, it's like, well, the universe will point you in the direction you need to get to live your life of fullness, happiness, most alive. But if you're just focusing on a number, that's like for a different business coach. That's not my style. Right. But if you're focusing in on like the life that you want, the happiness that you bring to yourself and others around you, the what you believe in, that's like this, the arrow pointing, and you can kind of visualize that and put it together with the cabin in the woods. By the way, since you're an artist, what I would suggest is like maybe paint something of like the cabin in the woods, and like not what it looks like and where it is, but like like maybe even put some words in, like what is it that helps like represent what that means to you, like that lifestyle, like the overall life. But I also wanted to ask, back to one more time with all of this, what would you like?
I'll just answer you the answer that came to me. Like, I really want to be a student all my life and like not be working a job and to be a student of life. And then I want that to be that student of life and to have that be my offering to the world.
What stops you? Okay, so stop right now. Bring your eyes back to where they were. When you first went up to look, you went like this, like over that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your eyes, hold your eyes there.
Okay.
Kind of up and to the left a little bit. And when I said, what stops you, that's where your eyes went.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to just feel, is there any image that shows up when you keep your eyes there?
Yeah, I mean, what came to me right when I popped my eyes up there and the words and what came was like, you said, what stops you? And the answer was like, everything we were just talking about. Right?
Okay, keep your eyes there. Everything we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Whose voice is that?
It is, it's a voice of, it's like a voice of habit. It's my voice, but it's like an exasperated voice of habit.
Exasperated voice of habit.
Yeah, it's like a story I'm tired of telling.
And it's a story you're tired of telling to
myself.
Okay. And what story, how does that story go?
It goes that I can't do this thing because XYZ. Insert reason.
Do you know one of the XYZ reasons?
Don't have time to do it. Have to live in the job and bills and money and the reality of life. Even that I know it's a dream that I can achieve, but stories come in and tell me all the reasons I can't.
Okay, thank you. Now keep your eyes there in that same spot. And I'm wondering, who or what is your brain seeing up there?
I'm seeing like a garbled, jumbled sort of web of old stories and ideas that they're still like, I'm seeing them right there out there, but I'm recognizing that those are like still in me. Like it's a web that's in me. It's got me.
Are you seeing you when you're saying that, or are you just seeing this kind of like web?
Yeah, I'm just seeing the web. Like it's not even me.
That's interesting. Is the web in color or black and white?
It's black and white. Yeah, it's just kind of a web. It's just kind of a web. It's like gray. And all tied up.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then about how far away in the distance does that web feel? Is it like close to you, or is it way, way, way far away?
It's out, like I'm just looking out my front door and it's in the tree. It's like up at the top of the trees on the other side of the road. So it's
Okay.
kind of up there as though it's a hawk, you know?
hmm Okay. And then are you looking through your current eyes right now, or are you looking through a different version of you?
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, it feels like both because I'm looking out my current eyes and I can see this clearly, but it also feels like a different version of me that needs to be able to be separate from it to be able to see it.
Hmm. Needs to be separate from it to be able to see it.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm seeing it as something separate from me rather than feeling that I'm inside of it right now.
hmm
Yeah.
Okay, this web you're seeing as something separate from you. And you mention it's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
Whose web does this belong to? Like, whose is this?
Well, it belongs to the web of ideas. It's like a web of human ideas that it's like a web that I've carried around with me, but it's not actually true. So it's like ideas I came up with. They're my ideas, but they're not me.
Hmm.
And they're not necessarily true anymore.
Hmm.
There were times that I was literally could not escape the things that I felt I needed to get out of.
Hmm.
And I came up with different ways to navigate life
Hmm.
within that, within that mm, whatever difficult situation I had to navigate, right? I figured out ways to do that like intelligently.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but, and so I created a lot of like stories and webs and ways of interacting with people and ways of showing up in the world to sort of have my life be workable. But I'm so much more free now. Like I don't need those things anymore that I needed when I was 8 or 12, or 15 or whatever.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Do you know at what point did this web, and I would try to keep your eyes looking at the web if you can.
Okay.
At what point did this web come into your life or become operational?
Mm, I mean, certainly sometime in elementary school.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a web that I will figure it out with my intellect.
Hmm. I will figure it out with my intellect.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the web, that was kind of the statement of the web, or?
Yeah. Apparently it is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you said that to yourself, or that the web said this, or that the web,
Mm,
like you could feel that statement appear?
not necessarily a first time, but I do sort of see an image of being young, and I used to actually do, among lots of other things, I used to actually like test myself on things when I was young.
Hmm.
Create. Used to actually spend time on like learning and taking tests around what I learned and my memory, and um, I felt like I feel being maybe like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that like my intellect was a really sharp power.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also like a place for me to go to figure out how to take care of myself in life.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You know, figure out all the answers to problems, figure them out ahead of time, plan for what the right answer would be, all these kind of things. Like really stimulated intellect.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Beautiful. What a great resource that's been for you.
Yeah,
How
it has.
brilliant. Your intellect has been so helpful. Can you see that, how it's helped you get to where you are? And you don't have to say exactly how old you are, but imagine or feel into how old you are today.
Mm-hmm.
You're still alive. You've jumped so many times. You've made these big leaps. You've gone after things and you are still alive. You're doing well. You're healthy. Look at how that intellect has served you.
Yeah.
And even that web and all its stories and everything it's said.
Mm-hmm.
It's done a great job of keeping you alive and protecting you.
Yes, it has.
I'm wondering, what do you know now that might be helpful for this web back then to know?
Hmm. Well, I know the things that you said, I know also what you just said, which is, you know, like how incredible this intellect is, right? How helpful it has been in so many ways and how it's like a superpower, right? And what I would like to say to that intellect is also that the intellect, just working as an intellect alone, can go different ways, right? It can go astray. Like it's done a lot of amazing things, mostly amazing positive things. And it's also kind of gone like renegade. I'd be like, intellect, I see you've actually gone renegade. And you have also made a lot of like structures and beliefs along the way that were really like crafty, and scrappy. And they're now sort of holding, um, they're actually undermining like the real sharp, beautiful, bright intellect that you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to let the intellect know that it's beautiful, and that it's also weighing its own self down
Mm.
with those constructions that don't serve.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would you like this kind of intellect web being? What would you like it to have more of?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, what came to me is I wanted to have more confidence in its own self. That it doesn't need to hold on to anything. Like its power and beauty is in its the flashes of intellect, right? It's like lightning. It's powerful and it doesn't need to do anything to be safe. You know, it doesn't need to like hang anything onto itself to keep itself safe, grounded, attached, knowing what's going to happen. It's actually what's actually needed from it is to go ahead and let itself, be the lightning.
Beautiful. Thank you. And that's something you can do is, start to build a relationship with this kind of web intellect thing. We can call it whatever we want, whatever resonates for you. But, safety is an interesting thing too. Does it know that it's safe right now, today, in the present moment? It's alive. It has shelter.
It does, but it doesn't. Like, it knows that it's safe, but it's like safe because it's done all the things it's done. Like, yes, it's safe because it's created all those constructs, and that's why it's safe. But what I can see and what I can say is that it's safe without that. And I can feel in my body that I'm safe. I can feel in my heart that I'm safe. There's safety. And there's going to be safety. And the intellect trying to create more safety is actually creating the limitation. So, yeah, really recognizing like this, the intellect needs to be free. The intellect is creating these structures.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and there's a lot. Okay, well, let's bring you back. So come back to your present state in your house, here in front of this camera today, and just know you can access this what you saw out there at any time. It's like building a relationship with this brilliant, helpful, amazing intellect that's kept you alive and safe and secure and healthy and well this whole time. And it has guided you to jump and leap and do big things across your life. And you've made it through each and every time. So that's something you can start to work with. But now I want to just bring you back into the future.
Okay.
In, let's say, like 6 months from now, 6 or 12 months, whichever resonates with you. You have this intellect that's come in and integrated in you, and you're so grateful it's helped you. But now it has more of this heart, this confidence, you really doing what you want to do, the cabin in the woods representation. How would it feel if, 6 months from now, this intellect was just kind of hanging out with you, but you were confident and it was like not in the way anymore. You were free. You were starting to, let go of these structures. And now it's maybe your heart balancing with your intellect.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, is that I feel I would be free, like really free. Like really free. Because what I was seeing there is that what's keeping me not free is those structures that it has built. It's not my body. It's not my heart. It's not my house. It's not money, right? It's like these structures, I could literally almost see them, like this beautiful spark of intellect, like this beautiful cloud of spark, right? And then like all these like things, around it that are just not it. And I would be free of that.
Yeah.
Like, there's movement, right? Like I can move. It's almost like a crystallization there that's keeping life from moving. But I'd be able to move.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the key with this too is with even the word free, it's really to integrate that part
Mm,
of yourself, because we don't want to get rid of it. It's been there since you were a kid, or maybe even longer, and who knows, the story of how long it's been there doesn't actually matter. What matters is now, like, integrating it into your being. It's and you can do however you work with it, but I personally like to work with visuals of, like, holding it like a baby or a little like pet, or maybe painting it, but like working with it as this kind of it's this protector part of you that's been keeping you alive, and it's been great. It's been functioning very, very well, so thank God you've had this. And now it just wants to be seen more and heard more, and like paid attention to. And the more it's like right there, and it's like, oh, I'm not trying to get your attention with all these strategies that are getting in the way, and like protecting you, and holding you back and keeping you small. So it's coming out from like those hidden places, and now it's just right here in front of you. So now it doesn't need to
mm,
claw for your attention. It's right there.
mm,
So then you can just
mm,
hold it, and you can say, like, oh, okay, like, I'm going to hold you right here. You're going to take a nap, but you're going to be right here with me. And now it's like, that is the freedom, is the integration of this, because now it's not trying to get your attention. Now you have this
mm,
space where you can move forward, where it's like, oh, okay, my intellect has served me well, but like now I'm going to try to, whatever it is, the heart, the truth, the confidence, what I really want, and all these strategies, which, by the way, there's a lot of pieces that came up during the session around, and they probably all lead back to like the intellect and maybe patterning, and usually there's so many layers always of, like, family. It's interesting, even your
yeah.
biological mom has some similar patterning. There's so much to it that one session isn't gonna tell us everything, but just bringing these up and like having the awarenesses of like the strategies, the patterns that have come in, and how they've affected things over and over and over. And there's nothing wrong with them. They're all great because they've kept you alive and well. That's the beauty
Mhm,
of it, is like, wow, these strategies, like, you probably wouldn't have made it without them. So now it's the integration, and then just the recognition. Like, there's nothing to even do now other than just work with these realizations that have come up, and like just bring, this is an opportunity to bring in more self-compassion, more love, like
mm,
more holding yourself, and definitely not like beating up that part or these parts that have been really actually working for you. It's like, oh, thank you so much. I actually had a visual
mhm,
myself a few months ago of like a trophy case. It's like, oh, look at all these strategies that have kept me alive. Like, I'm going to look at them every day and like honor them. But they're not like, oh, get away. They're like honored and welcome. But now, and it's like,
mm,
now that you have them like here integrated, that will free up the space to then move forward. And these little parts will creep in. They always do. But like now you have more of an awareness. And it's like, oh, okay, there's that part of me. And it's like now this true part of you, the
mm,
depths of your heart, is able to come out and take a little more of these leaps, and like shoot that arrow, and visualize where it's going, and like take the little steps, and be okay doing it.
mm,
Yeah.
mhm,
So that's,
mhm.
there's so much more we could do, but I don't want to keep this going too long. But how do you feel right now? Like, in general, do you feel?
I feel I feel grateful on the one hand, right, for what we've just done together and for the insight that it has brought me. And I also feel already a sense of, I feel some integration in this because you could see where I was already going, which was, well, I could just be free of that's attached in all those stories. But when you said, no, it's not like we're not cutting those off and becoming free of them because we threw them away and they're not there anymore. What you said about actually pulling them in and integrating them felt very true. That there's actually freedom in, I mean, this is like individuation. This is like, all those Jungian processes, right? That we don't get rid of those things, but we actually bring them into us, and they make us feel more, they make us actually more whole and more integrated. And so just by looking at that and honoring and saying like, yes, all those stories, the ones that have kept me safe and secure and really positive and good outcomes. And then some of them have maybe ended up being less skillful, right? But they were all like parts of me that are really deserve to be honored, right? And so to hold all of that in, then I'm free to say yes, and right, I've got all of this with me. Now what? Instead of being guided and being like held by them unconsciously and guided and led by them.
That's it. Yeah.
It's conscious. Yeah. I'm holding it. I'm aware of it. And I'm saying, I got you. Now where are we going to go next?
Perfect.
Right?
Yep. Beautiful.
So
yeah, because if we don't bring it to light, I mean, that's why it's like there's nothing to even do after the session. It's like, drink some water, go easy on yourself. That's it. But, now just the process of like bringing these little bits and pieces and the little things that you said during the session, bringing them to light is it. Like, that's it. Because then they're not going to be, it's kind of like, I picture it being this little like, it's like something clawing that's like, hello, hello. And this is where so many people get stuck or get into loops or patterns and cycles that tend to repeat over and over in whatever business, relationships, etc. It's like if we don't stop and actually see what's underneath and like at the root of a lot of these patternings, they just will keep repeating until we do, or, maybe in the next lifetime or the lifetime after that. But we have this opportunity with so many tools, with, psychedelic work, whatever it is, like all of the above, to like take some time to actually see like, okay, well, what's running underneath all of this? And most of it is like when you said, and I hear this a lot where people get stuck and they don't even know why. That's it. It's like and not to say this is everything, but it's probably just, it's a piece of the layer, but it's probably, a big piece. And the more you actually just do this, which you've already been doing, and the kind of work we do in the program, it's like the more it just starts to move on its own. I keep telling people, because, I'm studying a lot of these modalities and have been, but an example I heard recently that was really good is like, imagine a bunch of grapes. Like there's a whole bunch of grapes and they're all beautifully stacked, but then you pick one out and you take another out, you take another out, and they all kind of like shift a little bit, and it's like they just move places and now there's like a different pathway. And so now there's like space, like, oh, okay, we pulled out like this one major grape that was in the way of whatever's next in your incarnation. And we're not getting rid of, we're just like, taking that grape and eating it. It's like integrating. Then it's like, oh, now there's more space to go be myself and be my true self. And I can't wait to see what opens up. And by the way, I have to say the astrology reading connected to everything that's been coming through is quite big. I always say these astrology readings, I don't give them for like filler. Like they're not just for the hell of it. I give them because they're very on point. And I love when this happens, when everybody realizes like, oh my God, this is the same as my reading. Well, there you go.
Yeah, so much. And I had that reading back in December.
Isn't that crazy?
And it felt real and right and strong to me then. And then I was reading it again now and I was like, dang, you're still there. Like, here it is again, right?
Well, but you've been evolving.
I needed to come full circle back to it.
Yeah.
Because at the time, here, I'll tell you why. At the time, I understood it, but I didn't really understood.
Yeah.
I understood intellectually, but I wasn't sure how it connected to the journey and the next steps. And now the form of that connection, the why and the how of that connection is becoming clear after all this time. You know? So having that, I'm really glad I took really good notes and really took it seriously at the time, because now I'm able to go back and make a very clear link. There's no loss of memory. So I would suggest anybody who does that, like, get the recordings, take the notes, get really clear on it, right? For that moment and for the future.
And so, this is why I say it's all just, I mean, even this, like anything, any reading, anything I say in the mastermind, the more we kind of work with it as a contemplation or a prayer, like we don't have to figure things out. It's like a curiosity journey. Like, oh, I'm
Mm.
curious what that reading meant. I'm curious what that one symbol was. I'm curious about this one memory that came up from my past. Like there's no need to like fix or change or go after or, hem and haw or like meditate. It's like, just get curious around it. And what happens is I always see it as like, we build a relationship, and that's all it is. We're starting a new relationship. Now there's parts of yourself, there's parts of your past, there's parts of your psyche, there's parts of the unconscious that are coming up. And, there's nothing to actually do. Like, all we have to do is just like, oh, hey, oh, now you have a new relationship with this. I like to see it as like a little baby or a little puppy dog or a little, like, it's just a new being, and it's always been
Mhm.
there. But now you have an awareness, and all you have to do is like just start a relationship. Maybe, feed it some food here and there and like pet it and love it and visit it. Don't forget about it. It's like, what would you do if someone gave you a little puppy dog and now it's yours? It's kind of the same
Mhm.
thing. And it's the same with, the readings. It's the same with a lot of the exercises we do in the mastermind, because I always say there's like nowhere to get to. It's like a constant journey of, like being in the relationship with, and then you have these epiphany moments. Then you have the like, oh, I feel like this is next, or I want to go do this. And then you kind of like the leaps you've taken in the past. It's like, okay, maybe you have to create, like a visual or some kind of like place to get to. Doesn't matter if like you might not know like that's the place, but maybe it'll look different when you get there, but that's okay. But create the place and use that as your guide. Like, okay, here's the next place I'm going to. And that's it. Like, okay, it's the cabin in the woods. And you might quote get there. And then it's like, oh, okay, now there's a beach house on the ocean in New Zealand. Like, doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It's really
Mhm.
just like, this is like the human experience in itself. It's like we never know where we're getting to. We never know how anything's going to look. But all we can do is
Yeah.
build this relationship with what is coming through us and what's in the way. And there's, if we don't have like what we want and what we feel like is really in our heart, that means there's usually, something in the way. And as someone who's been studying this for a really long time, it's like there's usually like a deep rooted belief structure pattern. I mean, whatever we want to call them, it doesn't matter. And
Mhm.
that's like, this is where the magical work comes in, where, yeah, like I still do believe in the showing up and doing and the masculine. And, like you showed up and delivered a whole workshop and flew out to a retreat. That's the masculine. But then there's this other piece where it's like, we have to do a lot of this deeper inner work, or else we can never truly break through. So
Mm.
thank you so much for being an example and doing this with me. I
Yay!
hope it
Thank
was
you for your
fun and good.
guidance. It was fun. It was good. It was valuable. It was right at the moment. I think that it needed to be, because I just had this sort of breakthrough and aha, and then coming into the conversation with that and being able to start from right there felt perfect. Instead of me saying I'm stuck back here, like, oh, I just had this breakthrough. Now what's holding me back? And
Mm.
all of your guidance, all of your reflection, all pulling back into like what the program is, what we've learned, what we've done, what you offer, and then the pieces right now. I just can feel that little puppy. I can feel that little intellectual matrix, like web, whatever puppy being like, "Hey, look at me." I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking at you." And that's like that's what's needed, right? Is just
Mhm.
to be seen and to be integrated. So I feel so much yeah, lots of gratitude for everything that's been able to be integrated. And I'm actually excited to like take both of these, our conversations and the realizations, right?
Mhm.
And just maybe there's an arrow to point right now, right? I look forward to checking back in with you on
I
it.
know. I can't wait. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna encourage you on our call next week to share what you've just like some of this even, but even the exercise you did, the one that I've been
Mm-hmm.
recommending and I'll probably recommend again and again.
Mm-hmm.
It's so helpful, and it's like 5 minutes, But I'm so
Yeah.
glad you showed up. This is such a good time, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. This has
Yeah.
been super fun, and I can't wait to see
I
you.
appreciate you too. Thank you for creating the container and making the offer. I appreciate you. I'm
Aw,
grateful. All the best. And I will definitely report back next week.
thank you.